Welcome to the Teachers on Fire podcast, where I profile agents of growth and transformation in education today. Each guest shares their highs, their lows, their passions, their goals, and the resources that are shaping their thinking and inspiring their practice. For show notes and links from each episode, visit teachersonfire.net. You can also follow the show at Teachers on Fire on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And of course, please subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm your host, Tim Cavey. Let's meet today's guest. Today I'm speaking with Lynmara Colon. Lynmara is a dynamic leader committed to student learning and growth. She is passionate about technology, access, and equity for all students, and was named in the NSBA 20 to Watch for innovative practices. As a former teacher, assistant principal, and principal, Lynmara is focused on building healthy cultures by leading with a Disney mentality where all stakeholders are welcomed. Lynn holds 2 master's degrees, a degree in curriculum and instruction and the other in educational leadership. She is currently pursuing her doctorate in education through Old Dominion University, and she is also the co-author of the recently published Empower Our Girls, Opening the Door for Girls to Achieve More. You can follow Lynn on Twitter at @thecolon_S and on her blog at leadwithmagic.com. Lynn, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Are you ready to talk education?
I am. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
Well, I am too, and this book has been making waves, so I look forward to jumping into Empower Our Girls. But first, Lynn, why don't you start by telling us a little bit more about your current context in education? What does that look like for you on a daily basis?
So I am in Manassas, Virginia, Prince William County schools. We're a very large district with close to 100 sites, 90,000 students. 29,000 of those are English learners who speak 140 languages. We're very, very diverse. I get to oversee the central registration aspect, translations, instructional services, professional learning. I'm also an instructional point of contact for schools and influencing everything that happens for English learners.
There is a lot going on in your world, and I look forward to coming back to some of what you mentioned there, including that incredible diversity in your district. But first of all, Lynn, or second, I should say, it's story time. So please share with us about a low moment or some kind of an experience of adversity that you faced in your teaching or education career, and then describe how you overcame it.
So, this is my first year in this role, and I find myself going back to my first year as a principal, and it's really interesting because you don't forget, but I'm tapping into those challenges to help me do better in this new role. So, my first year as a principal, it was hard because I came from a Title I school where things happen naturally because my first language is Spanish. We had a lot of Hispanic students at the school, and then I came to this school with 1,200 elementary students, and the population looked different. I had many ideas that I thought of when I was an assistant principal at the Title I school, and naive me thought, well, I can implement them here. I read the 90 days. I was just eager to jump into the work, not really valuing the power of listening. And I am the type of leader that uh, wants things and I dream about them. I read about them. And I will say I like to move fast. But my first year, I learned that slow is better combined with listening. I was lucky to hire a teacher that later became my administrative intern, and she was so good to me. She helped me understand that I needed to build relationships first and earn trust because I was impatient, right? I wanted them to know that I meant well, but in the process, I forgot that relationships take time. So she made me better as a result. And as I transition into this role, I'm finding myself looking for those people, I call them cocoon friends, that will give me context and hold me accountable when I'm going too fast, saying, you might want to slow down, right? Because this is a year of listening. So hopefully I did better than my first year, but that was a big lesson.
Well, I can't speak from experience, but I would imagine for a lot of administrators, it is so appealing to want to completely transform an organization and institute all kinds of new practices. But that makes a lot of sense that we need those relationships in place, that people need to feel heard and valued. And that takes time. And so I think that's really good advice, no matter what our leadership role looks like. Lynn, you recently published Empower Our Girls, opening the door for girls to achieve more, and you did it with my friend Adam Welcome. Tell us about the heart and message of this book. Why did you write it, and what can educators expect to get from it?
I am so excited about the feedback that we have received. The book started initially with a conversation, and those that will read the book will learn more about it. The last chapter is all about how this work started, and Adam and I's conversation about the need for this work. But I will be very honest with you. I when I look at the work, I wrote this book for me because it's such a vulnerable piece, and all the people that came together advocating for this work. And I'm very vulnerable in my story because I struggle with a lot of the issues that are addressed in the book, and now as an adult I feel so responsible for sharing the story so that our young girls can be better as a result. So yes, it's a very vulnerable piece. It's raw. It's just packed with great action items that can start in the classroom, in groups, in people who are just looking to make our girls stronger and give them the voice that they deserve to have.
It is packed with ideas, Lynn, and I just received my copy yesterday, so I'm excited to get into it. First of all, it's a fairly short read, but it's 29 chapters of ideas and information. It's a bit of an anthology, right? You're bringing together several different authors and contributors. Tell us about that process.
Yes, so we wanted to make sure that it was just not something based solely on research, but people who've had these challenges, experiences, and that are doing the work. So I think that's what makes it valuable. Again, going to my story and Adam's story of just doing this work. I'll tell you, I talk a lot about my dad who passed out recently and how he came from a good place trying to protect me and shelter me, but then at the same time left me without the necessary skills for me to feel as if I can do this. I can be anything I want to be without having to, count with someone else. Same with mentors and how it's not all about having the same gender mentors, but how I found, and Adam is an example, in a man, someone that encourages me and tells me, listen, you too can do that. So, yes, we have superintendents, we have people in technology, we have people in education and medicine, athletes, just sharing their journey in hopes that those that read it feel encouraged to say, someone has removed roadblocks from me already, and I'm feeling inspired to do anything I want to do.
So exciting. Now, I want to make this practical, Lynn. I'm a middle school teacher currently, and I know you can't share all 29 chapters with me this morning, but what what are some practical things that I can do to empower the girls in my classroom?
So, I will say awareness, and that's something that the book provides. But I'll give you an example. I went to have lunch the other day with a group of girls that invited me to talk about the book, and I was observing the interactions, and I noticed that there was this girl who was quiet, and the other ones dominated the conversation, and it reminded me about how sometimes that happens in classrooms and we get so busy that we're not paying attention to individual students, and in this case, girls, asking, tell me a little bit more about your aspirations, right? And building those relationships. So being intentional about asking the right questions, and that's where the action items that are in the book will help, so that we can help them discover the voice. Because if we don't do it, how are they going to be better at it? So we finished the lunch, and then I made it a point to meet with her because I wanted to hear what she had to say. And then, she shared what she wanted to be when she grew up. She shared a little bit more in that intimate space that she didn't feel comfortable sharing in a larger group. So just looking for that balance and acknowledging, hey, that's a great idea. Tell me more. It shows we care, and I think it's a good start to empower our girls to just have that voice, because sometimes we have boys, or even some girls that already found that and they have the support that they need to just be vocal. But then there's the quiet one
Mhm.
that we just have to be intentional about helping them discover them, who they are, and the potential.
I love that. It reminds me of a message that we're hearing a lot from Brene Brown and other great leaders right now, and that is, I see you and you matter. And I think that's a great takeaway for me, because you're right. Sometimes those quieter types in the classroom can tend to sort of disappear into the background, and we need to make sure their voices are heard. I'm just flipping through the book, and I noticed chapter 27, Nudge Girls to Discover Their Voices, by Dr. Todd Schmidt, principal in California, a former guest of Teachers on Fire as well. So I can't say enough about the message of the book. I think it's so good, and I know it's going to be helpful in my practice as well. You're also quite involved with services for English language learners and immigrant children, as you said in your introduction. Can you share more about your work there? And particularly, in your view, what can schools and educators do to better serve our immigrant communities?
Well, I serve in this role out of purpose. I'm an English learner myself. I was born, raised in Puerto Rico, and I actually did my bachelor's in Puerto Rico. So all my schooling was in Spanish. And then I came here when I was 19. And I will tell you, I loved being a principal, but this role is different because every day I get to influence how we serve and support students who come from backgrounds like mine. In this responsibility, it's huge because it involves moving a lot of people, and just sharing this passion and care about else. So I will say I work for a division that is committed to provide our students with what I call that magical experience. It's like the Disney part, and it feels good to be part of that work. But it starts with professional development. I think that sometimes we are drawn to what we like. So in my case, I'm passionate about literacy. So when I was a teacher, I would engage in a lot of literacy professional development, but being intentional about learning how English learners really learn and acquire language, it's a priority for us. And I have seen how else have grown as a result, because usually I'm saying we because I've experienced it myself, we're seen from a deficit lens, right? Because you don't know the language, you can't do this, or you can't be exposed to these experiences. And yes, there's some unique challenges with this group of students, but we have so much potential. Our kids have so much potential, in making it a priority to look at them as individual learners. I mean, there's so much that we do. We translate documents. We're intentional about that. We provide parents with classes on our educational system. We translate conferences, and just strive to develop a culture where our staff is intentional about providing students with the same learning experience, regardless of where they come from. That's what I call the Disney experience. I want my kids not only to be excited to be on the other side, right, and coming to America, but to have quality education so that they can be productive citizens. And my hope is just to raise students, right, and to provide an experience where they can replace me and share their voice of, hey, if I can, you can too. So I don't miss an opportunity just to let them know, listen, it's hard. I've been there. I'm that student, but it can be done. And to have that influence now, that's my American dream.
Well, that's so exciting. And you're right. You're modeling the work that you're calling these learners to, and you're showing them a roadmap. And I mean, what a story. You are yourself with 2 master's degrees, working on a PhD, and going on to lead in so many capacities. Fantastic stuff. Lynn, as you look across your PLN and your own practice, what is it that excites you about education today? This could be a big picture answer or something right there on the micro. What is it that really energizes you right now?
So I have been very excited about the USED toolkit for Tech Toolkit for ELS. And, I talked to you about how a lot of people see our students from a deficit level, but
Right.
to know that the Department of Ed has acknowledged that they should have access to technology and innovative practices is exciting to me. So now, when we are making decisions, we are discussing English learners at what I call the dinner table. So that's encouraging when it comes to the work around equity. I sit on the VISTI board here at our state, and they are part of the conversation. Our kids are part of the conversation. We have a lot of teachers that are providing support and really planning with those things in mind, and kids are winning as a result. So I have been very excited about that and the partnerships that we have created to ensure that no matter what school you go to, no matter which teacher you have, our students are going to have access to technology and innovative practices.
That is so cool. Lynn, let's move on to talk about your goals. How are you looking to grow professionally and improve your practice in the capacities that you serve in? Do you have a particular goal or project that you're currently working on?
So I've been up since 5 o'clock reading, and I'm working on my doctorate. So it has been a dream of mine for some time. And I told you I'm an English learner myself, and my language proficiency. I guess doubting myself kept me from applying to the program for years, and now I am sharing space with people from different backgrounds, teachers, directors, uh, leaders, school leaders from different divisions. And I'm having conversations with them and learning from their perspective. And I've enjoyed sharing space with them when we get together to discuss journal articles or what we're writing about. Our titles really don't matter, which is really nice because when you're in a role like mine, feedback from your stakeholders doesn't happen naturally because the title gets in the way, if you know what I'm saying. But here, that doesn't matter. We're just people trying to change the game of education. We grapple with some difficult topics, and I feel that I have grown my network in that way. So their family, I'm excited about what I'm reading and just learning from a different lens, right? On getting this idea of this is what's been happening in education, and then this is what I can do to move us forward.
Do you find, Lynn, in the academic world and in the doctorate circles that you are talking about, do you find a lot of educators are active on Twitter, or is that a tough sell sometimes?
So I have a couple of professors that are active on Twitter, and I have one in particular. Dr. White. She's very passionate about ELS, and we follow each other, and we've engaged in conversations about articles that are posted on Twitter. And then my classmates, I will say for the most part, they are on Twitter. So it's like our little PLN. We call it PhD goals.
Oh, that's fun.
But yes, it's growing. Yes.
That's so cool. Well, I mean, I'm a little biased, but I think Twitter is so valuable when it comes to building those relationships and those conversations that you talked about between peers. I think is so important. And Twitter provides a great place to have those conversations. Lynn, let's take it outside of the classroom, away from education. What is it that ignites you outside of the classroom and brings you alive as a human being?
My role that requires a lot of deep thinking. I write policies and regulations that require heavy concentration, and that has been a shift from the principalship. So I started running with this role and also started the Miracle Morning routine based on the Miracle Morning book.
Okay.
So I wake up at 4:45 every day. I run 2 miles usually, and then do devotional combined with journaling, and then read for 20 minutes. It has been very powerful because it gets me ready for the day, focus, on positivity because I know my work is gonna bring a lot of deep issues. So I have that time to get me ready. And I did a hike recently with some friends that took me 7 hours. And I was just surprised that this routine led me to something that I didn't know my body could really handle. So it just shows the power of great habits. So I'm enjoying that.
Well, I mean, Lynn, you worked with Adam Welcome, so you kind of have to start running, don't you?
Yes. Yes.
He pushes everyone around him. I know that. He certainly pushed me when he was on Teachers on Fire. And you mentioned the Miracle Morning. Now, I haven't read the book, but that's from Hal Elrod, right?
Yes, yes. And during the process of writing the book, I read The Miracle Morning for Writers.
Ah,
So instead of journaling now, what I did was I engaged in that writing piece. And I'm hoping that this habit will lead me to the dissertation piece because I have already created that habit of writing in the morning. So it's pretty powerful and it has great tips. Jessica Cabine introduced me to that practice, and it has been game changing.
you know what, Lynn? I am going to take that away from this conversation myself. I need to write a master's thesis this summer. And so the Miracle Morning for Writers, that sounds like something I need to integrate. Share about a personal habit. Now, we just talked about a couple of personal habits that are really working for you, Lynn, but is there something else by way of productivity that contributes to your success and really allows you to get it all done?
Breakfast and sleep. Breakfast, I learned from, again, the Miracle Morning because you have slept for so many hours, you need to nourish your body, and that is related and connected so much to thinking. And I think in our roles, we get hired because we have all these ideas and we're able to move fast. And then if you skip those two, how are you going to guarantee that you're on top of your game to make things happen? Right. So I don't skip breakfast and I try to get at least 6 hours of sleep every day because I don't know how my day is going to look like and the intensity of it. And it just goes to say how you take care of your body. If you're not doing well, you can't produce. And I recently experienced, well, not recently, but earlier when I was not taking care of myself, how my body shut down
Hmm.
and then things piled up. So I think that is so important, taking care of our bodies so that we are able to give back.
Hmm. One of my recent guests, Andy Milne, talked about the power of sleep, and he referenced a book called Why We Sleep. So I keep hearing that one. And I'm curious, Lynn, so you mentioned you're up at 4:45. So are you hitting the hay around 10:30, or what's your goal in the evenings usually?
My goal is 10.
10 o'clock.
My goal is
Okay.
10. And I have an app that lets me know you need to be ready. I've also removed electronics
Mm.
30 minutes prior to going to sleep because I learned that it just affected my brain and whatever I read or email, that's what set the stage for my sleep. So I would worry about things like that. So I read before I go to sleep. And it has been great. It's a powerful practice.
I so agree. I made the decision about a year and a half ago to put the phone completely out of my bedroom when I go to bed.
Hmm.
And it is game changing because a lot of people would tell me, oh, I don't look at my phone. It's beside my bed, but I don't look at it. But, studies have shown that, I mean, this is kind of weird, but we are just aware that the phone is there and it sort of sends our minds in the direction of all these different apps and as you said, email and so forth. So just having it completely removed from the room puts you in a different headspace. And if you're listening to this and you are the kind of person that has your phone with you 24/7, I would encourage you to give it a try. Listen to Lynn's advice here and get the electronics out, and your sleep quality will improve. We promise you that. So, Lynn, it's time for your quick picks. And here we want to know the education voices and resources that are shaping your practice and inspiring your thinking today. So, I asked you a little bit about Twitter. Why don't you tell us about someone there that we should follow and share why they've been inspiring you lately?
So I have been following my superintendent. His handle is at super PWCS. He inspires me to get weekly out there in classrooms. I mean, we are a very large school division, and he's making it a point to be in schools and just talk to students. And it had me thinking that what a great way to show teachers and our stakeholders that we are not leading from an office or a big building, that our classroom has become the schools. So I'm being very intentional about that and spending the majority of my time out in schools, just letting teachers know I'm here to support you and talking to kids. So that has been powerful just to model that after him. I mean, we have almost 100 sites, and if he can do it, I feel okay. I can do it too. There's no excuse, right? People by day, paper by night. So it's a good handle to follow. He has over 18,000 followers, and the posts are all focused on students, and you can see the exchanges of kids asking questions and him answering and looking into supporting kids. So for those people that think it's just impossible, I think there's hope and a lot of modeling in his feed.
That is incredible visibility to hit 100 schools over the course of a year. And I love it when superintendents and leaders take on that role of, as I've heard it called, a good news gossip, right? To sort of report on and share all of the amazing things happening at the schools and in the classrooms under their care. So, Super PWCS, I'll make sure I am following him. And point us to an ed tech tool that you currently love using somewhere in your professional practice. What is really working for you?
So I'm loving Canva to promote events and messaging and that whole branding. Lexia Core 5, I'm loving for language support because it has relevant books, especially for secondary students, because there's so much out there for English learners for elementary. But then when you move up, especially for newcomers and students with interrupted schooling, to find things that are just relevant to their interests, it's not always easy. And Lexia, it's an amazing tool. And for me personally, in my leadership role, anything Apple to keep me sane and connected, so that I don't miss a thing. I get a lot of emails, updates, and people texting that they want me to go to their schools or my steps and how am I doing with my heart rate and water intake, and having everything connected is just nice.
Recommend a book, one that you've been reading lately or one of your all time faves, and tell us why you recommend it.
I am obsessed with radical candor. It has a lot of tips for leaders and people who might find it difficult to have challenging conversations, and feedback for people doing the job. And the author does an amazing job moving us from good job to, okay, this was great, but let me show you how it can be improved. They make a lot of reference to Google and Apple, combining that innovative piece. But going back to Brene, she says clear is kind, and I think that's what this book does, how you can provide people with clarity on their performance and things that they can do to grow, but still be honest so that they can be intentional about the work.
Lynn, are you a podcast listener? If you are, recommend one that you've got in your Apple Podcast list and maybe share with us why we should subscribe.
Oh, I love Rachel Hollis. She's my best friend and she doesn't even know it. But she's so encouraging. And it's funny because she talks about you can have mentors and they don't even know they're your mentor. And that's what she is for me. She's funny, witty, and just has real advice on just following your dreams. When I was writing, she has a great story about a lot of failures with writing, and she talks about that. She has two bestseller books, and she also has a podcast with her husband. So it's not only driven to females, and I don't think that that's her focus, but it's also called Rice, and she's just amazing. She's a powerhouse.
You know, I was hearing her name so much. It's really funny that you mention her because just yesterday, Lynn, I listened to her podcast, the one that you mentioned that she does with her husband. I think it's
Hmm.
called Rise Together. And
Yes.
yeah, and the episode yesterday was What Women Want. So
Oh,
so
okay.
I gained some good insights about how to love my wife better, but no, she's definitely a name to be familiar with. And then tell us about a YouTube channel. We're sort of scanning the whole media spectrum here, Lynn. So is there a channel that you enjoy and go to on a regular basis? Is there one that we need to check out as well?
I'm enjoying Goldcast. They have inspirational videos, and they're good for pick me ups. Sometimes we go through seasons where we either need encouragement or just to look at or listen to people's stories of how they've overcome certain things. So they have curated tons of videos, and I actually use them not only for inspiration but to share with my staff and colleagues, because they're good. They're just good for if you want to start a staff meeting or you want to include it in a presentation. But great stories of real people who have overcome a variety of challenges. I think there's so much negativity in this world that we have to go back to, listen, it's gonna be okay if we really do this work together, and if we have hope and we encourage one another. So I love that channel.
I look forward to checking it out. Last one, Lynn, is just for fun, strictly non educational. What are you watching on Netflix right now?
So I have twins and they are going to be seniors. Yeah, they reminded me the last day of school, they said, "Mom, we're seniors now." So I have to change my vocabulary, but I'm watching Grey's Anatomy with them because they seem
All
to
right.
love it. And I am trying to spend every minute of this last year before they go to college just doing different things. So they like Grey's Anatomy, so I'm catching up so I can have meaningful conversations because I keep asking questions and they said, "Mom, no, you have to watch it so you understand what's happening on now." So I'm catching up.
Sure. Is one of the twins going into the medical field?
No, I have one that wants to be a technical writer, and the other one wants to be a teacher.
Okay. All right. So Grey's Anatomy is purely for entertainment. I get it. I get it. That's why most people watch that show. Hey, Lynn, this has been awesome. What are the best ways for the listeners to follow you and connect more with your message about empowerment for girls?
I am on social media, pretty active at the Colons on Twitter. Then I have the website leadwithmagic.com. Lynmara Cosme on Instagram and Facebook. And then there is the book. So my story is there. I'm pretty responsive. I believe that we are in this work together. So any questions, any support, any encouragement, I stand ready to engage in the conversation.
Well, again, I've got a copy here in my hands. It looks like a great read, a short read, very doable, and a lot of really good bite-sized insights to take in. So that's going to be part of my summer reading. Lynn, what a pleasure it was to connect with you and get a sense of your heart and hear more about what you are all about. So thank you so much for sharing your time with the podcast today. I'm inspired, and like I said, I look forward to connecting more and learning more from you going forward. So take care, and let's talk again soon.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. It's been lovely.
Thanks for joining me today here on the Teachers on Fire podcast. For show notes and links from this episode, visit teachersonfire.net. You can also follow the show at Teachers on Fire on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Medium. And again, please do subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. Just before we sign off today, I'd like to invite you to leave any questions, suggestions, or feedback to the show in the form of a voice message. You can do so by locating Teachers on Fire right there in the Anchor app, or if you're on Voxer, leave me a message at Tim Cavey. Either way, I'd be thrilled to hear from you and feature your message in a future episode. Next, I'd like to thank all those who encourage and support the podcast on Twitter. At Malika EDU recently tweeted, "Shout out to Tim Cavey for another excellent interview and podcast. Thank you for your work, pal." Clayton was a guest way back on episode 6 of the podcast, and he's also a great classmate in my Master's in Educational Leadership program. So thank you, Clayton. I really appreciate your support. And hey, I've enjoyed seeing more from you on Twitter lately. At Michelle Newell, that's at MECHELENEWELL, recently tweeted, "Have you heard Teachers on Fire? Been listening today. Yes, binge listening. Good stuff. Check it out." Michelle, nothing makes me happier than to hear that my stuff is actually binge-worthy, and of course, full credit goes to the amazing guests I've been featuring on the podcast, and so thank you so much for sharing that. Next, we have the one and only George Kuros. He tweeted, "Honored to have Innovator's Mindset on this list with so many great books, the best books in education via Teachers on Fire." And of course, George is referring to the list of book picks that I am tracking on my website. Every guest that comes on the program gives me at least one choice for books, and I've recorded all of them there. And so you can see where the trends are, and you can see which books are sort of rising to the top in terms of numbers of picks. And his, of course, is right near the top. That's The Innovator's Mindset. And of course, George has another new book coming out shortly, so watch for that one as well. Chris Woods at Daily STEM tweets, "This interview with I Love Educating on the Teachers on Fire podcast is filled with ideas for setting goals, especially for making reading part of your personal growth as an educator." And Chris mentioned at I Love Educating. Of course, that is Alicia Ray, the consummate reader and reviewer of Dave Burgess Consulting Books. And she was recently featured on the podcast. I would definitely agree with Chris. A great episode to check out, particularly if you need a little motivation for summer reading. So thank you so much for the encouragement, Clayton, Michelle, George, and Chris. You four were the fuel to my fire this week. And thank you as well to others who continue to comment and encourage me on Twitter. That's where I spend a lot of my time in between episodes. I will also invite you to check out the new Teachers on Fire magazine on Medium. This week we featured Risky Business by Caitlin Giordano, and she can be found on Twitter at Mrs._Giordano. Caitlin writes bravely about what it can look like to take risks in the classroom. Let me give you this juicy excerpt. Quote, disastrous is the only way I can describe that first week. Kids were confused, unprepared, and as my fellow middle school teachers can attest, dreadful at managing their own time without support. My risk, one I had contemplated for months, had not paid off at all. End quote. Now, I promise you, Caitlin does end the story on a positive note, but isn't that candid and transparent? I think you'll find it really refreshing and encouraging to sort of go through her journey there. We also recently featured a piece from Lynn Thomas. She can be found at TomLynn101. That's TomLynn 101 on Twitter. And she published a piece called J is for Jawbreakers and the Jabberwock. And I'll share this inspiring paragraph. Quote, it makes me so sad to think that our general overprotectiveness is actually diminishing our children's joy. Bring joy back, break out the jawbreakers, let the jabberwocks attack, and let children sloppy suck while defending their own tree forts. It'll be the best thing we ever did. End quote. So if you are, like Lynn, an advocate for more fun in the classroom, make sure you check out her piece on the Teachers on Fire magazine. So where do you find the magazine? Well, it's on Medium, and you can get to Medium either at medium.com or through the Medium app right there on your phone. If you're already an education blogger, consider joining our growing writing team. You can continue to publish content on your own blog, and you keep full credit and ownership of your content on Medium. Message me at Teachers on Fire on any social media platform for more details. Again, I'm your host, Tim Cavey, and I'm so grateful that you decided to spend some of your day listening to this podcast. I hope that in some way the content you heard today ignited your thinking and inspired your practice. And I'll meet you next week right here on the Teachers on Fire podcast.